All right, welcome back to another episode of Sean and Ed's Do Baseball.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Ed's.
And we are bringing you baseball history.
That's right, we're a bi-weekly baseball history podcast where the story catcher doesn't know what the story pitcher is out on the mound throwing them.
And today we don't know the pitcher, we just met him.
That's right.
Very much across.
We're both sitting back and catching. This is a two-catcher game. It's a whole new thing for the cross-up league.
It's wild. Two catchers, base runners are fucked. Anyways, Edsy, where can people find us?
People can find us on our social medias at Doing Baseball or at Doing.Baseball, whatever platform you're trying to find us on. If you try one of those two handles, I'm sure you'll be able to track us down. So go ahead and do that.
Absolutely. And of course, for this story, we're going to crack open a Two Loons. You can find them at twoloonsbrewing.com or your local LCBO or watering hole. Grab a Two Loons IPA or lager, available across Ontario and hopefully everywhere else very soon. And as always,
please be of legal drinking age and, of course, enjoy responsibly, Sean.
Of course. And we are both going to be enjoying responsibly. We have a wonderful person and a legend, someone who has helped us out with a couple stories as well with their great baseball knowledge. Executive Director of Design and Development, Executive Director of Design, Adam, for Sports Reference, which of course is Baseball Reference, among other things, Immaculate Grid, among other things. We got the guy that puts the grid together, Edsy.
I know. I'm very excited to hear what Adam has in store for us today.
And if you haven't figured it out, Adam is going to be sharing a story with us instead of one of us sharing a story. This is only the second time this has happened on the podcast. Very excited to be here. Adam, how you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm excited to join because I've really enjoyed what you've been doing. Fresh off the Luke Easter episode, especially if people haven't listened to that one, it was phenomenal. I mean, like literally got a little emotional at the end. It was so good. You mentioned I do design work over at Sports Reference, so we work on Baseball Reference, StatHead, Immaculate Grid, all the other reference sites. And been there for a few years. I'm working out of Massachusetts in the Providence, Rhode Island area. Baseball history nerd. I love German club Borussia Dortmund. That's my one sports team that I follow very closely is a German soccer team. Go figure. But that's kind of my thing.
Oh, thank you so much for being here, Adam. And in the Luke Easter episode, we were corresponding and you were sharing some of your stats. Which people definitely I encourage people to check out at Darowski.com. That's DAROWSKI.com. But I also stumbled over your name in that episode, and you still gave us the time and day to come on here, and not only that, research a story for us as well to tell us.
Wait, I was supposed to research a story?
But before we get going too, Adam, I just want to commend you for, I noticed, I believe it's you and the other people I see on Blue Sky and stuff with your grid obscurity. Because I try to do the grid myself, and, I sometimes think that I'm doing a pretty good job of, how it gives you the percentage of the people that have picked those names. And my God, like some of the names that are popping up are just insane.
That is a lot of the history nerd in me. If you ask me to name a Rockies third baseman, I'm gonna trip all over it. But if I'm looking for a couple of the old teams or an obscure stat, I definitely have that's the stuff I love. Especially I've started collecting vintage baseball cards lately. So now I'm like, oh, I've seen a card of that guy on the Cardinals and the A's. So guess what? I'm going to put him in. And it's like somebody that nobody's heard of yet.
Yeah, well, you should be very proud of the obscurity of the names that you're pulling out of the hat there. So I just wanted to say that before we get started here. So
I appreciate that. Almost all of them are for a reason that I remember them. So they all have a good story. So I wonder maybe a couple of them will come up in today's story.
There we go. Oh,
Hopefully.
That was a segue. That was a segue. All right, Adam, let's get going. I'm excited to sit down and listen.
So this is wild that I'm like presenting. You have absolutely no idea what the topic is, which is fun. I don't know. I was wondering, should I make you like try to guess what something that's related to the topic, or should I just jump right into it?
Well, you can. We sometimes give like very vague hints before, like the night before. We'll be excited to share the story, but we can't talk to anybody else about it. So we do sometimes give very vague hints, but with the purpose of being like they'll never guess. So we might as well. I think we might just skip to the story, but up to you.
All right. Well, the first sentence probably won't be a surprise. It is the year is 1937, and baseball is segregated. So I'm a Negro Leagues researcher.
It is
Latin American research. in this story, it is. Yeah,
okay. Very much. Is
wild. I'm like holding paper and everything. I'm not used to this. This is great. So the Negro Leagues were established in 1920, first with the Negro National League, and then further strengthened 3 years later with the formation of the Eastern Colored League. But black baseball began to struggle after a series of unfortunate events. The Eastern Colored League failed to finish the 1928 season. The American Negro League attempted to give the ECL teams a new home, but only lasted a year itself. Then the Great Depression hit black baseball really hard, and the Negro National League folded after the 1931 season. Rube Foster, founder and leader of the Negro Leagues, died in 1930 in an insane asylum. So Negro Leagues baseball is kind of struggling here in the 30s.
Okay.
So it struggled through the mid-1930s with leagues popping up just as quickly as they folded. The second Negro National League was founded by Gus Greenlee in 1933. Greenlee was a numbers runner, and he owned the Pittsburgh Crawfords.
We have done an episode.
We know Gus.
Yes. Don't worry, it's not an episode just on Gus. I want to take that worry out of.
You would have done it better.
Yes.
No, it does talk about some of Gus's guys, but the story is only partly about him.
Nice.
So his Crawfords featured Hall of Famers Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, Oscar Charleston, Cool Papa Bell, and Judy Johnson. In 1937, the new Negro American League also launched, but it hadn't yet stabilized. We're in 1937 here. That's the present time for our story. So this was a time of financial difficulty, inconsistent organization, and player turnover. But throughout this, the Crawfords they stood out for their consistency and dominance. Gibson, Page, Charleston, and Bell were still at the core of the team heading into 1937. But the team wasn't top-heavy. It included talents like star infielder, outfielder Sammy Bankhead, a co-ace named Leroy Matlock, who's a great pitcher. The team had East-West All-Stars at 8 of 9 positions. Just second baseman Dick C.A. Was not an All-Star. And they did have 2 pitchers that were all-stars. Both Page and Matlock were all-stars. So like the whole lineup is all-stars.
Holy
shit! Who was the guy that was the Dick something?
Dick C.A. Yeah, S-E-A-Y. Great fielder, but he couldn't hit.
Okay.
Imagine being on a team of all-stars and just being the guy, the glove.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, he was still a really good player. He might have been an all-star other years. He just wasn't that year.
Okay.
He gets lost in the shuffle with all of those superstars there, obviously.
I know, it's ridiculous.
That's wild.
So at this point, Satchel Paige, who is kind of a central figure in our story here, he's a 29-year-old superstar, and he reports to spring training in New Orleans, where the Crawfords are training. And it's there that he's approached by Dr. Jose Enrique Ibar.
Ooh.
And Ibar offers him $30,000 to recruit some players and come play baseball in the Dominican Republic.
All right.
So Page only made about $600 a month for the Crawfords, so this is a pretty massive raise.
Wow.
At first, Page was pretty skeptical, but the next day, Ibar showed him a briefcase full of money, and Satchel was in.
Imagine those days.
That would do it.
Yeah. So this is kind of what our story is about: Satchel and the Dominican Republic. So I don't know if you know this story at all, but I've talked about it a little bit on like Twitter and Blue Sky. It's like my favorite baseball story. This should be a movie. So I'm very excited about this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I know it happened. I don't know the details, so very excited.
So the source of this unexpected opportunity was Rafael Trujillo, the dictator of the Dominican Republic. Trujillo ruled the country with an iron fist from 1930 until his assassination in 1961. He rose to power through a combination of political maneuvering and brute force, establishing a regime marked by repression, violence, and a pervasive cult of personality. Though not a baseball enthusiast himself, Trujillo recognized the sport's potential to unify the nation and bolster his image, leading him to invest heavily in creating a team that would become a symbol of his power. And,
why would someone assassinate someone like that?
Oh yeah, he's
seems like a great guy.
Oh, totally.
Terrible.
So now to kind of like paint a picture of what baseball in the Dominican was like back then. So in the 1920s, it gradually evolved from like amateur to semi-pro to now fully professional by the end of the decade. The league recruited talented foreigners like Cuba's Ramon Bragana, who I love, another Cuban pitcher, Cocaína Garcia. I don't know if you know that name, but it's perhaps the best nickname ever. We'll be talking about Cocaína, don't worry. Alejandro Oms, also of Cuba, Pancho Coimbre of Puerto Rico. There was a native Dominican player, Juan Tetelo Vargas, who we'll also be talking about here. Greatest Dominican player of the first half of the 20th century. He had played domestically in the Dominican Republic, but also abroad in Puerto Rico, Venezuela, the United States, Cuba, and even Colombia. Which, gosh, I would love to hear more about Colombian baseball back then.
Oh my
God,
God.
we even recruited some good players over there.
No, that would be amazing. This is you're like naming. Occasionally, you're like touching on a name that I know I have on my list of guys for a potential episode. Every time, I'm just like, oh.
Really, the purpose of picking this topic was to introduce a bunch of people that are players that I love. So if there's ever any confusion about who I'm talking about at any time, feel free to ask for clarification. That's one of the main goals here, is to learn about some of these characters.
Awesome.
So in 1936, so the year before this Trujillo season, the Dominican League featured 4 teams: the Estrellas Orientales, who were the champions, Agualinas Cibaeñas, Tigres del Licey, and Leones del Escogido. Ahead of the 1937 season, the 2 teams based in Santo Domingo, the Tigres and Leones, Tigers and Lions, were combined into Los Dragones de Ciudad Trujillo. And Ciudad Trujillo was the new name for Santo Domingo, because Trujillo, of course, had to name it Trujillo City after himself, something he did in 1936.
He follows the lines of a lot of dictators.
He's
lean into sports and name a city after yourself.
It's like Gulf of Trujillo. No, sorry, I'm not gonna go.
It should be. I'm sorry.
So in the 1937 season became essentially a re-election campaign for him. Of course, the re-election was kind of a farce because he was a dictator, but he needed the public to believe it was a election. So his political opponents funded the other 2 teams, and he funded the Dragones.
That's his political opponents fund different teams, and he funds this. So, oh my goodness. Okay, this is wild. Is it like a show? Like they have to play real baseball, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, they're going to play some.
And even in baseball, like the other team's going to win sometimes. So Trujillo's team has to lose at some point.
Oh, they will.
Okay.
So there were no restrictions placed on how many foreign players you could employ on your team in this season, which was a little bit strange because he was so, he thought Dominicans were, he was
the best.
Big into ethnic cleansing and stuff like that. But when it comes to baseball, he's going to bring in, whoever's going to help him do his job here. So they could target whoever they wanted. He didn't seem to consider that his rivals could also therefore sign other players as well. Something he kind of forgot about. But some of the players that he did bring in, 24-year-old Lazaro Salazar, which was, I brought him up. That was the reason I was thinking about possibly even just doing an episode on him, because I know you guys had shared that out. I love Lázaro Salazar, just a huge figure in Latin American baseball. He was a player manager. This was his first managerial appointment, actually, for this team. But he would be a manager for years and years. He was only 24 at the time. Not only was he a player manager, he was also a pitcher, outfielder, first baseman. He just kind of did it all. They also had Silvio Garcia, who was also from Cuba, and he started the season with the team. At this point, Garcia was also still a two-way player, but the strong shortstop hurt his arm a few years later and would focus on his hitting. Less than a decade after this, Garcia would actually be one of the players the Brooklyn Dodgers considered to reintegrate the major leagues ahead of Jackie Robinson. But supposedly, discussions got progressed to the point that Branch Rickey asked Garcia how he would react to a white player spitting in his face, to which Silvio Garcia said, "I'd kill him."
Okay.
And that abandoned the experiment, and Ricky would then actually focus his efforts not on Jackie next, but on Monte Irvin next.
Yeah.
But Effa Manley wouldn't sell Monte Irvin to Branch Rickey, so he ended up going to the Monarchs to get Jackie Robinson because they had a white owner, J.L. Wilkinson. And if J.L. Wilkinson put up a stink, it would have not looked good that, here's this white man stopping the first black man from integrating the major leagues. So that's a whole story in itself.
Oh, yeah. No. And Effa as well. Effa's a whole story in her own part that will be covered one day by us.
She was like, "You want my players? Effa you."
Well, that's the great part about everybody thinks about it from the one side, but from the Negro League owners, right? It was the end. It was the beginning of the end. So, it was as good or as progressive as it was. For the people that owned black baseball teams, it was the beginning of the end for their teams. So,
oh yeah, even the players that were sold for a fee, like Branch Rickey purchased Sam Jethro's contract. I think he paid like $5,000 or $10,000 for it, and then he turns around and sells them to the Braves for like $125,000.
Oh, God.
Oh my God.
Wow. Yeah.
So the Dragones also recruited from Puerto Rico, bringing in two of the biggest stars from the island ahead of Roberto Clemente's debut. Francisco Pancho Coimbre is often cited as being a part of the team, but then it's also hard to find him appearing in games. I think what may have happened is he may have left the team early and gone back home. But another player from Puerto Rico who is on the team quite a bit, although he didn't start as much for the team as you would think, is a player named Pedro Perucho Cepeda.
Oh.
And Perucho Cepeda, he played a few seasons in the Dominican Republic. Back in 1929, he actually hit .429 in the Dominican Republic. This season, he struggled to get playing time, but he actually left the team a little bit early and went back to Puerto Rico. And shortly upon his return was the birth of his son, Orlando Cepeda. Who, you may have recognized that last name.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And Perucho is possibly the best black player to not even appear in the Negro Leagues. He was given several offers, but he hated the segregation in the United States, had a horrible temper, wasn't going to put up with it, so he decided just going to play in Latin America. But like when the Puerto Rican Winter League started in 38, 39, like he was the MVP, hit .465, just an incredible player.
Holy moly.
Yeah, Orlando said that Perucho Cepeda was better than he was. So.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that's. It's amazing that you forget. Well, you don't forget, but you don't learn as much about it unless you look into it. There was a whole other baseball realm in this hemisphere.
Oh, there certainly was. Estrellas Orientales brought back Titelo Vargas, who hit .319 the previous season during their championship run. He's probably best known for being the all-time single-season batting average record holder on Baseball Reference for one of his seasons with the New York Cubans. Hit .471 in 30 known box scores. Yes. He played over 60 games that year, but in terms of box scores that have been discovered, it's just 30. Although there's reason to believe he kept that up for the full year too. I mean, he played 33 seasons in 7 countries, hit 300 everywhere he went, often 400 everywhere he went. Just a great player who is much more than that one little footnote on his baseball reference record.
Wow.
And he was joined in the lineup by an aging Cuban legend, Alejandro Oms. Oms actually did play several seasons in the United States and had batting average, OBP, and slugging way over 300, 400, 500. He was just a massive star offensively and defensively. But he was 41 in this season, but still a star. Los Estrellas, they had 2 Cuban co-aces on their team who could hold their own at the plate as well. Bragani, who I mentioned earlier, he was their ace in 1936. He won the MVP award and went 9-1. Later had a long career in the Mexican League. He was the league's only 30-game winner. And 2 years before that, he actually blasted 17 home runs, which was second in the league behind only Monty Irvin. So this is a guy who definitely could do it on both sides. And Manuel Cocaína Garcia, who I mentioned earlier, he was the co-ace, the left-handed side. He was short and stocky, pitched briefly for the Estrellas in 36, but mostly pitched in Venezuela. He went 9-2 with a 1.93 ERA in Venezuela. Could also hit. He was a very good contact hitter, not the power hitter that Bragani was. And of course, he got his nickname. Buck O'Neill described it as his pitches seemed to drug the batters. So that's why they called him Cocaína.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that up. I was going to ask.
I was disappointed that he wasn't like gaunt and thin. I'm just saying, on the same point, like I just picture somebody that was just like running around the change room, just like, but apparently he was just drugging batters.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, we got one more team to talk about here. Águilas Cibaeñas, or the Eagles. They had plenty of talent of their own. They made Hall of Famer Martin Dihigo the highest paid player in Latin America. That is before Page came over. Yeah. Dihigo famously could play anywhere in the field, was also a pitcher. They also had Santos Amaro of Cuba. Now, if you know like Ruben Amaro Jr., this is the oldest of the Amaro clan. Never played in the Negro Leagues, never played in the major leagues, but he was a star in Cuba. Also a star in Mexico. So he was the team's leading hitter. And they also had, speaking of older family members, they had Louis Tiant Sr. So this league is just full of names that, you know, we have Amaros in the game today. You know, we just lost Louis Tiant. So this really just follows through to the current times. They also had a prominent Dominican player in Horacio Rabbit Martinez. He was not the best hitter in the world, but a phenomenal fielder. I don't know if he was quite the Mark Belanger of Dominican baseball back then, or maybe the Omar Vizquel, that type of. I don't want to attach Omar Vizquel to his name. Rabbit was, or maybe the Rabbit Moranville. There you go.
Rabbit Moranville, yeah.
Actually,
another character.
Oh, shocking how well that works. Those rabbits are similar. So a lot of these guys, Salazar, Silvio Garcia, Dihigo, Tiant Martinez, they all played for the New York Cubans in the Negro Leagues in 1936, as well as Herman Jabbo Andrews, who actually joined the Dragones right before Page arrived, and Chet Brewer, who was signed by Los Aguilas at the end of May. All of these players played for the New York Cubans, but the Cubans failed to field a team in 1937, leaving all of this talent looking for places to play. And that led a lot of them to the Dominican Republic. So that was a lot of build-up and setup of like, who's here? But, you know, we get the season started with all this talent in the league, you know, and all this talent on the team. The Dragones did not get off to the start that they wanted. They were stumbling, and Trujillo wanted to supplement the roster with players from the white major leagues. Ooh. But that was too cost prohibitive. But that would have been wild if all of a sudden he's like pulling Ted Williams down to the Dominican Republic. But so he had to look for the next best thing, and the next best level of talent he found at a price he could afford was the Negro Leagues, which, as we mentioned earlier, was going through financial times. And, you know, if you flash some cash, the players might turn their heads. And the Page was Page was the first of what would be many defectors. He actually requested that his catcher on the Crawfords, Cy Perkins, join him.
Mm-hmm.
And Ibar was like, "Yep, bring him down. Let's go."
We got an R.A. Dickey situation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The pair arrived in Ciudad Trujillo on April 18th, and Page made his debut 1 week later. He faced off against Bragana, and I'm sure he was like, "Oh, coming down to Latin America, going to do super well here." He started strong, but then allowed 6 runs all of a sudden. It was like, ooh. Luckily, his teammates came back and they won 8-7 in 11 innings. But he was like, "Oh, okay, this is going to be a little bit of a challenge."
This is not easy. And to be clear, this league is just 3 teams, right?
Right.
So it's just
usually
teams.
4, but
yeah.
And even you get a lot of that. Like the Cuban League was often like 3 or 4 teams.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico, I think, was often like 5 teams, 6 teams. So they're small countries. Yeah. So the fewer teams, you get a lot of stacked talent. Like there's a lot of talent in this 3-team league right now.
I was going to say the talent pool is very thick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they're pulling from, as you say, Puerto Rico and Cuba and now the United States as well.
And it was just the start of pulling players in too. There's going to be more. Just a spoiler alert. So the trip started pretty luxuriously for Satchel. Games were only played on the weekends, so they had all week to enjoy the tropical island and all the amenities that it had to offer.
Yeah.
But as the schedule progressed and the Dragones were stuck in last place, the vibes kind of changed. Ibar took stronger control of the club and pressure mounted from Trujillo. And the players were watched more closely to ensure they were in peak condition ahead of the weekend's games. So, there was a little bit of a closer eye put on them. But despite the season being done, as I mentioned, recruitment was not done. Satchel sent for reinforcements pretty soon after arriving and enlisted, just James Cool Papa Bell, Sam Bankhead, Leroy Matlock, and Harry Williams, all from the Crawfords. So Greenlee's just like
Greenlee's
at this point
screwed. Hey, and you managed to mention 3. We did we've done Crawford and we've who have we done? And
Greenlee.
No, we've done Greenlee,
Cool Papa, and Sam Bankhead. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's wild. So they all just they all end up down with Satchel.
Oh yeah. What? Pretty much in this time, if Satchel recommended you do something, you did it. The Estrellas also raided the Crawfords. They sent a representative named Fernando Nina to sign pitcher Ernest Spoon Carter. But by this time, Greenlee was furious and ready to put a stop to the raids. So he had Crawford's manager, Oscar Charleston, just Oscar Charleston. Uh-huh. He had him keep an eye on Nina and Carter when they were in conversation at the Crawford Grill, which was owned by Greenlee. And Charleston, watched the 2 of them and then followed them back to the hotel where they were staying and burst into the room when Carter was about to be signed by Nina and threatened him and said, "You got to get out of here." And Greenlee came in and had him detained and put into jail for 2 days.
Whoa.
Then it was realized that not really anything to detain him for. So they let him out and he went back to the Dominican Republic with Spoon Carter. After all that, he got his guy.
Short-sighted, right? They're like, we got to beat the dictator by becoming the dictator. And then they're like, oh crap, we can't just hold him in jail indefinitely. He's gonna leave.
The Estrellas also added George Tubby Scales. This is now just becoming a way to talk about every player that I love from the Negro Leagues in Latin America. Scales played for the New York Black Yankees in 1936, hit .358, .435, .558. Awesome hitter. He received 25% of the vote for the 2022 early baseball committee ballot for the Hall of Fame. Over a 26-year career, he hit well over 300 and slugged well over 500. Got on base well over 400, and he was an infielder. This guy won a bunch of titles in Latin America as a manager. He's one of the easiest cases for the Hall of Fame, George Scales.
Yeah, wow. That's a no-brainer.
And then at the end of May, the Aguilas added Chet Brewer, who I mentioned, and also Pat Patterson from the Crawfords again. And they also added Philadelphia Stars outfielder Roy Parnell. But the biggest trophy of them all arrived on June 11th as Page finally convinced Josh Gibson to join the team for the stretch run. So now we've got Gibson joining as well. He was the only player to actually get permission from his team to join the league. Greenlee had traded Gibson earlier in the year to attempt to generate the capital to pay Satchel and keep him happy. That backfired.
Yep.
So the Homestead owner, Composey, he wasn't particularly thrilled that Gibson was going to go to the Dominican Republic, but he didn't stand in his way. He was like the only player that, didn't face suspension for making this jump. So he got there on June 11th and got a similarly rude introduction. Cocaina Garcia left him hitless at the plate. So, but that said, at this point, when Gibson arrived, things finally started clicking for the Dragones. They took hold of first place, and things started to fall apart for the defending champion Estrellas. As the team slipped into last place, some of the players started returning home early, and then their star player, Ramon Bragana, the Mexican League 30-game winner, 17 home run guy, he was suspended for 10 games for fighting an umpire. Side note on Bragana, that's not even his most interesting long-term suspension that he had in Latin America. So,
oh my goodness,
time to share that story. So in 1946, he was a pitcher and manager for the Azules de Veracruz in the Mexican League. Jorge Pascual was the owner of both the league and the Veracruz club, and he invited Babe Ruth down to Mexico for a vacation. It's expected that they were considering like giving him a manager job or maybe even like partial ownership or something like that. Mm-hmm. So they invited him down for just to kind of like show him off. Ahead of a game between Veracruz and the Mexico City Diablos, the 51-year-old Ruth was scheduled to put on a home run display, and Bragana was selected to pitch to him. He was supposed to groove him in, but Bragana just kept giving him his best stuff. And after 30 pitches, Ruth had done nothing with them, so the Mexico City manager comes out and argues with Bragana, and of course, a fight breaks out. So,
of course,
Pascual has no choice, and he suspends Bragana for a month. So that's a wild suspension from our guy Ramon Bragana.
So it's 10 games for fighting an umpire and a 30-day suspension for striking out 51-year-old Babe Ruth.
There was also a fight in that.
Oh yeah, he fought his manager, right?
He fought his manager and embarrassed the league president. So I guess a
30,
bunch of things.
30 is light.
So after the Dragones swept a late June doubleheader with the Estrellas, the defending champs were mathematically eliminated, and they actually dropped them from the league. And then they rearranged the schedule to include only matchups between the Dragones and the Aguilas, essentially making it like a championship series.
Okay.
So 3 games were scheduled for the last weekend in June, 3 more for the first weekend in July, and then if needed, wink, wink, it's going to be needed.
Yeah.
The championship game would be played on July 11th. So the Dragones started strong in game 1. They had a 10-1 win. Matlock took a shutout into the 9th, and Martin Dihigo hit a home run to put the Aguilas on the board, but they won 10-1. Josh Gibson collected 3 hits. Cool Papa scored 3 times. They were coasting. So the second game was Page against Dihigo. Page fanned 11, kept Dihigo hitless, and won 5-1. And then in game 3 on Sunday, Bob Griffith, the number 3 starter, he started against Louis Tiant and won 6-1. So Dragones come right out and win 3 games. So midweek, they're flying high. They've got 3 wins. It's reported that 4 Aguilas players, including Tiant and Amaro, just left given the dire situation for the team.
Wow.
Alas, it was a false rumor that Amaro left. He actually was there and in the lineup for game 4, and he collected 4 hits. And despite that, the Dragones won again, 8-7. Gibson hit 2 triples, so they won the first 4. At this point, I can't figure out why the series isn't over. The Dragones have won 4 in a row. It seems like there's no way for the Aguilas to climb back. But for some reason, they were not done, and I have yet to figure out why. I'll just say that. Griffith started game 5, and the Aguilas were all over him and scored 6 runs. Josh Gibson Josh Gibson tried to come back all by himself. He hit for the cycle, hit a home run in the 9th inning, but still lost. What was that one? That was 8-7 as well. An Amaro home run won it for them. So Amaro, who was supposed to be gone, is a thorn in their side here all of a sudden.
He's being the hero.
Oh, yeah. So now Page squares off against Chet Brewer, and with this second chance here to win the championship. So Brewer got out on top 4-2 and handed Satchel his second loss. We've got the 2 games the next day. That was the first game the next day. And then after getting out to a commanding lead, they lost those 2 games in a row. The first one, they lost when Griffith allowed the 6 runs, and then the second one when Page lost to Brewer 4-2. All right, so that's 2 losses in a row. If they had won either of those games, they would have won the championship. So now all week long, the island is buzzed talking about the championship. Now it's going to come down to this one game. So while the fans are excited, those associated with the teams were a little anxious. As the week wore on, there was an even closer eye placed on the players with the purpose of ensuring that they were completely focused on the weekend's match. And the pressure was on the Dragones was the strongest. Chet Brewer, ahead of on Saturday night before the game, supposedly was walking around like, where is everybody? And he was told, oh, they're in jail. So they literally incarcerated them the last day to make sure that they weren't out drinking before this big game.
Yeah, Trujillo took a number out of what's his, God darn it, why am I capping on his name? I'm saying Composy, but it's not Composy. Greenlee, yeah. Trujillo takes a number from Gus Greenlee and throws everyone in jail just to keep him out of trouble.
That should work.
So now we're down to the championship game here, and the Dragones picked Matlock to start the game and not Page. So Page was a little surprised, but the decision wasn't preposterous. Matlock was a bona fide star, and the stats available on Baseball Reference in the last 4 seasons for the Crawfords, he'd led the league in pitching WAR 3 times and was coming off back-to-back win titles. So this was a guy in his prime right here. He also hadn't pitched since game 1 when he nearly shut out the Aguilas, so he was fresh. So the stakes are at an all-time high for this game. The fields were lined with guards brandishing rifles and knives. The Dragones were told by their manager, and I'm not sure if the manager at this point is still Lazaro Salazar or if they mean Ibar. They were told, you'd better win. And Satchel says, he's like, whoa, what do you mean you'd better win? And he was told, I mean just that, you better win. And at this point, when Page realized what he had gotten himself and his fellow players into, they were representing a brutal dictator who needed to assert his dominance over his political challengers and would neutralize anything in his path. Page and the Dragones were simply a tool to help him achieve his goals. If they did not succeed, they would not get off the island.
What a spot to be in.
Yeah. This is why I think this is the next baseball movie that needs to be made, like the win or else,
Game 7. And
exactly.
There's just a firing squad waiting in the one change room and champagne in the other.
Yeah. Oh gosh, pick your door. So Matlock was brilliant out of the gate, throwing hitless ball through the first 5 innings. Brewer, however, matched him with scoreless innings until running into trouble in the bottom of the 5th. Dragones third baseman Cuso Carrera drew a walk. Matlock then attempted to sacrifice him to second, but Brewer's high throw to second left everyone safe. And then Cool Papa Bell also bunted, and when he bunts, everything all hell breaks loose. Martinez bobbled Rabbit Martinez bobbled the ball as he tried to cut down Bell, and the bases are now loaded. And that's just on a walk and 2 bunts. So Harry Williams and Lazaro Salazar then smacked back-to-back singles to center field to bring home 3 runs. So you've allowed 3 runs. Now that brings up Josh Gibson. Oh boy. So Gibson ripped one to deep shortstop, but Martinez was able to put a glove on it, but he couldn't throw Gibson out, loaded the bases again. So this brings up Sam Bankhead. And I'll note that it's unclear to me why Silvio Garcia, who I mentioned earlier, he's the I'd kill him guy.
Yeah.
Why he didn't play. This was the only game the entire season that Garcia didn't play. So I don't know if he got hurt the day before or something like that. But Bankhead was a pretty good shortstop as well. Probably should be in the Hall of Fame. So he's up now with the bases loaded, and Dihigo decides he's seen enough from Brewer and walked in from center field to take the ball himself as the relief pitcher. So he's here to limit the damage, and Bankhead meets him with a grand slam home run onto the street.
Whoa.
So that makes it 7-0. Dihigo gets a couple outs, and then Correa comes back up to the plate. Infield single, takes second on an error. Matlock comes up again, doubles home run to make it 8-0, helping out his cause here. Finally get out of that inning. But Matlock heads into the 9th, leading 8-2, and the win feels imminent. But of course, it's not that easy. The first 3 players reach base, and Page gets summoned for what should be a relatively easy save. So there's runners on first and third, and an 8-3 advantage. Yeah, normally an easy cleanup job, but these are not ordinary circumstances. Page's eyes were on the soldiers and their weapons. His usual confidence and flamboyance gave way to nervousness and caution. So Pat Patterson, a young Crawford's infielder who went on to hit .324 with several All-Star appearances in his Negro League's career. He's the first guy up against Page, and he greets him with an RBI single, now 8-4. Santos Amaro strolls up to the plate. He also drills a single, 8-5. So Page luckily got a ground ball from Roy Parnell to get the second out, but that brings up Dihigo with the potential tying run. Like, all the best characters are coming up at all the right times here. Dihigo's already taken Page deep 3 times in the short season. And this time, he didn't go deep, but he did deliver the 3rd straight run-scoring single, making it 8-6.
Whoa.
And now there's runners at first and third with Aguilas catcher Clarence Palm coming to the plate. And Palm was not an easy out himself. He hit over .290 in a 20-year career. So he swings hard, he connects, he bounces a ball to the hole, shortstop hole. Sammy Bankhead backhands it, plants himself, throws across his body, all the way across. The throw is sailing up the line, but luckily Lazaro Salazar is also an incredible fielder. He stretches, catches it for the out. Dragones win.
Amazing.
They get to live.
Bankhead bails him out.
So it was more of a sigh of relief than, feeling of joy, because, they won, but, the game was not the number one thing on their mind. So I want to talk a little bit about the stats from this season, because there's a lot of guys in here. Josh Gibson arrived after the season's midway point, but still he was the statistical star of the league. In 13 games, he led the league with 21 runs batted in and tied with Salazar for the lead with 5 triples. He hit .453 and slugged .830. Aguilas and Dihigo and Santos Amaro shared the home run lead with 4. Amaro hit .309. Dihigo batted .351 while going 6-4 on the mound. Salazar led the league with 31 runs scored and batted .292. This was the first of his 14 Latin American titles as a manager before his tragic death in 1957 at age 44. So he had 14 titles before age 44 as a manager.
Wow.
Jesus.
Silvio Garcia, he paced the league in hits with 38, doubles with 14, batted .297. Page went 8-2 on the mound, despite some of the struggles that we mentioned here. Matlock went 4-1. And then for the last place, Estrellas, Brigani only went 4-7, but he hit .311 with 3 home runs. Such a weird dude. I love him. He's a guy that on my outsider stats there, I've found exactly 300 wins for him so far. So I know there's more out there, but just a tremendous player in Latin American baseball. Cocaina Garcia went 5-3 and batted .254. And then some other standouts, the Aguilas Clyde Spearman hit .352, Pat Patterson hit .319, Cool Papa Bell hit .318 with 14 runs in 16 games. Bankhead hit .309. Totelo Vargas hit .283. George Scales hit .295 for the Estrellas. And when the American Negro League players returned home, most, except Gibson, as I mentioned, faced suspension from the Negro Leagues. Page organized a barnstorming club for many of the American players across all of the teams, and they were referred to as like the Trujillo All-Stars, the Santo Domingo Stars, or sometimes simply Satchel Page's All-Stars.
Mhm.
And that team entered the prestigious Denver Post semi-pro national tournament and won, of course.
Of course.
You know, you got Satchel Paige leading a semi-pro team, you're going to win. So Trujillo is not actually a baseball fan and never actually went to the games. His goal was just to use baseball as an instrument to gain more power. The enormous expense of the 1937 season actually bankrupted the league, and professional baseball didn't return to the Dominican Republic until 1951. And just weeks after the... Go ahead.
No, he was still in charge. I'm just surprised because he said he was there until 61. So,
right.
So it was just a 14-year hiatus. They're like, we just spent too much money. Let's take 12 plus years. Let's just take 12 plus years off.
I mean, he had other things on his mind. Like a few weeks after the season ended, his army began a genocide that resulted in the brutal killing of thousands of Haitians.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. That's terrible. I was going to say, I knew that might come up.
Yeah, that caused an international uproar, of course, and that led to him kind of like scaling back on his public persona and not really being in the public as much. He was still pulling the strings, but he had other people being the figureheads. And like we mentioned, finally assassinated in 1961. And that's the end of the story.
Page. Right, Satchel Paige.
Fastball to the temple now.
You heard it here first, folks. No, that was amazing, Edsy. That was what do you think that we've heard of the second dictator using baseball on this podcast? That is amazing.
That was a wild story, and thank you for clarifying. I believe in. I mean, it was one of our very early episodes, so I can't really remember. But when I did Cool Papa Bell like 4 or 5 years ago, I think we talked about how, they went down there for this just one season, but and then there was, as you mentioned, a 13 or 14-year hiatus. And I don't think we really got into the reason why. So thank you for bringing this full circle 5 years later, Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. And, one of my favorite things about it is there's so many, I'm a Negro Leagues researcher, but also Latin American baseball is another really, really interesting thing to me because, you realize that, the Negro League players would go over to these Latin American leagues, but there were also these Latin American stars who were at home in those leagues. Sometimes they came over and played in the Negro League. Sometimes they didn't. Like, I think Bragania played 1 or 2 seasons in the Negro Leagues, but played forever in Mexico and Dominican Republic and Venezuela. And Titelo Vargas I mentioned too. Like, these are guys that I tend to believe had Hall of Fame talent. Like, if they played their full careers in the Negro Leagues, I think Titelo Vargas is a Hall of Famer. I think that Bragania probably is as well. I think that Lazaro Salazar, given his managerial career, I mean, who knows if he would have gotten the managerial success in the U.S., but that guy, he's in like 3 different halls of fame, like Cuba, Venezuela, Mexico, just a huge figure. So excited to have the chance to talk about these guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for, coming on and shedding some light on that, because it's definitely not, there's a certain amount of coverage on the Negro Leagues, but I think that the leagues in Latin America are, for lack of a better term, a little bit forgotten about in the, North American consciousness.
Yeah. I will just jump in and just say thanks so much. And my wife always asks me, when are you going to do something on Latin American players? Because we really haven't done a ton. Like, we've done Hiram Beathorn, but that beyond that, I just thank you for this, because there is a ton of guys that we've had, at least on our list of guys to cover, and as you mentioned, it's just like a whole different world of these guys that probably would be in the Hall of Fame if there was just different circumstances or they were just born somewhere else.
Yeah, a lot of these guys, if you want to peruse their stats, I mentioned I have a website Darowski.com/outsider, where I post as many stats as I can find for these guys. And, like they add up. Like I said, Bragana with the 300 wins now. And I think Silvio Garcia is like around 2,700 hits. And that's without having like his full seasons too. Like there's a lot of stuff that's missing here. Cocaína Garcia, another really great one as well. So I'm
gonna be talking about Cocaína Garcia for a long time.
I'm gonna be Googling
he was cool.
Cocaína Garcia as soon as we get off the call here.
Oh yeah, I think you probably brought up like a dozen people that we probably half a dozen we have covered and a dozen that we should be covering in a future episode. I gotta say the Babe Ruth strikeout story was there. Like that is.
I love it. Bragana is like, I am not letting you do it.
The sidebars that you find sometimes when you're researching these stories, right? You're like, wow, suspended 10 games, but that wasn't the longest. Oh my God. Adam, thank you so much. Once again, we want to shout out Adam's website, and that is Darowski.com, Darowski. I got it drilled into my mind now. I'll never mess it up again, Adam, I promise. And thank you so much for having us. Is there any other places, anything? Of course, go on. If you don't know what Baseball Reference is, I have no idea how you found this podcast, but go on there and look at it. The design is amazing. It's simple but perfect. It is like absolutely one of the best put together. And if you're a soccer fan, a basketball fan, I think a hockey fan, all of that stuff, we have Adam to thank for putting some of that stuff together for us. And thanks so much, Adam. Anything else before we leave?
Well, just now you've all got a whole bunch of other names you can use in the Immaculate Grid too. If you see like 300 hitter in the outfield, you can use Totelo Vargas. If you get pitched in the Negro Leagues, you can do Ramon Bragana or Cocaína Garcia. All these new names you can use now. So be sure to use it.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to get my obscurity score down or up or whichever direction it is. But I'm looking forward to playing the grid now and thinking about this story.
Excellent.
Thanks so much, Adam. Edsy, where can people find us on the internet?
People can find us on the internet somewhere at Doing Baseball or at Doing.Baseball.
That's right. And wherever you're listening to us, however you're listening to us, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to have more baseball history for you in 2 weeks. Give us a review, give us a rating, share with your friends, share with your pets, share with everybody, because baseball history is fun. And we didn't even mention we're gearing up for opening day. Whenever you're listening to this, it's almost opening day. We did it. We got through the winter. We're almost there.
Thank God.
Until next time, though, Edsy. I'm Sean.
And I'm Eds.
That's right. And we were doing baseball. Thanks so much.
Okay, bye.
Oh, it's fun! They're having fun!
So dumb.
No!